Before diving into this incredible story, consider subscribing to the channel and hitting the bell. Every story here has something to say, and you won't want to miss a single one. There are encounters that turn a life upside down, nights that transform a destiny. It's often believed that the most opposite souls avoid each other, that they naturally ignore each other, like two rivers flowing in opposite directions. But sometimes, these currents suddenly cross, in a silent collision that redraws the contours of the world. For Emily Carter, a young woman of 19, shy, discreet, almost invisible to the eyes of the world, this night was going to be the end of a chapter too narrow, too wise. She had grown up in a white house with a wooden porch, blue shutters peeling from the sun of the Mississippi, in the small town of Greenville, where everyone knew everyone else, and above all, where everyone allowed themselves to judge. His mother, Ruth Carter, a third-grade teacher at the local school, advocated discipline, modesty, prayers before every meal, and skirts below the knee. Her father, the Reverend Samuel Carter, held the Baptist church with the same firm hand he used when blessing or scolding. Emily had been raised to believe that the world was a trap, that big cities swallowed up pure souls, and that lust, especially that of women, was a fault to be confessed, never embraced. And yet, despite the sermons, despite the plain, hand-sewn dresses and Sundays spent in polished oak pews, something burned gently within her. A longing for light, for escape. To discover what was beyond from the bell tower, beyond the Yazoo River, beyond the judgments. She secretly read forbidden romance novels, silently underlined sentences, listened to old jazz songs in her room, imagining distant, free lives. She had never kissed anyone, but she already knew that when that day came, it would be a full, conscious decision. Her body and her heart would belong neither to her parents nor to the church, but to her alone. Hundreds of kilometers away, New York, another world was spinning at a speed that Greenville could not even have conceived. It was the universe of Alexander Reed, 36 years old, hand-tailored suit, steely gaze, rare smile often devoid of warmth. CEO of the real estate group Reed & Crown, he lived in a glass tower overlooking Manhattan, in an apartment where each piece of furniture was worth more than the annual income of a Greenville resident. Alexander was a self-made man in appearance, but not in soul. His father, an unscrupulous tycoon, had left him everything as an inheritance, except love. His mother, an artist lost in a world too cold, had died young, of alcohol and loneliness. His sister, Lena, 7 years her junior, had taken her own life at the age of 20, in heavy silence, after years of suffering that no one wanted to talk about. Since that day, Alexander had walled himself up in control. Every hour of his life was planned. Every relationship, calculated. He didn't fall in love, he signed contracts. He didn't make promises, had drafted clauses. The women in his bed were beautiful, cultured, powerful, but none of them touched what was left of humanity in him. He avoided anything that might resemble tenderness. Until this night. Until she, who did not come from his world, who had nothing to prove to him, nothing to sell to him. She, whom he did not understand, but whose eyes had disarmed him with a simple glance. For Alexander, this fragile young woman should have been nothing more than a passing spark, a rural fantasy that brushed against his concrete reality. Just another curiosity. But the moment their eyes met in the hushed hubbub of a New York gala, something snapped. Not in his heart. He wasn't ready to admit it existed, but in his instincts. He sensed that this girl with the thin hands and the clumsy smile was not simply innocent. She carried within her something rare, something burning, a truth. And this truth would disturb the thick walls he had spent 15 years building. Fate, capricious and implacable, made them cross paths at Charleston, a city frozen between the rustlings of the South and the memories of another time. That evening, the heat was humid, almost stifling, as if even the air knew that something irreversible was about to happen. The charity gala for underprivileged children was held in a restored old mansion, a red brick building with white columns, lit with gold garlands, crystal candelabras, and discreet violins. The biggest names on the East Coast had gathered there, dressed in silk, velvet, and ambitions disguised as philanthropy. Emily Carter, who had never set foot in such a sumptuous place, had entered through the back door, literally. She was only there because her aunt, Virginia, a housekeeper at a Charleston hotel, had been loaned a job by the gala organizers. She had begged Emily to come and help her serve the appetizers. Emily had hesitated, but the call of the world, even glimpsed through the curtains, had been stronger. It wasn't an evening dress she was wearing, just a robe simple, hand-sewn by herself, in cream cotton, accented with a thin, faded satin belt. Her hair was pulled back in a modest braid, and yet something in her walk, in the way she observed people, in the way she smiled shyly, distinguished her. She wasn't trying to be seen. And yet, she was noticed. What the fuck? Alexander Reed, who saw her first. He was sitting at an oval table, a glass of whiskey in his hand, distractedly listening to the honeyed speech of a local politician. But his gaze, wandering, fixed on she. She had sat down by mistake, trying to rest for a few minutes, thinking the table was empty, but there it was. She blushed and stood up quickly, confused. "I'm sorry, I didn't know that." "Stay," he said simply, in a deep, calm voice. Their eyes met. His eyes, bright green, were full of a disarming innocence, but also of a strange calm. His own, dark, burning, but haunted, seemed to be looking for a flaw in this gentleness. He had seen hundreds of faces, but none like this one. He asked her name. "Emily," she replied. No last name, just Emily. And that was enough. He asked her to dance. She refused at first, politely, intimidated by the looks, by the difference in worlds between them. Then, without knowing why, was it the music, the way he looked at her, or this irrational feeling Oph already seen? She gave in. On the dance floor, her hand in his, she felt herself floating. She had never danced a waltz, but her steps followed his with a strange ease. She wasn't smiling. She was looking at him, deeply, as if she were reading right through him. Alexander, accustomed to women who flirt or challenge him, was disturbed. She wasn't trying to impress him or please him. She observed him, like a mystery that she already half knew. At the end of the evening, he insisted on walking her home. She hesitated, but agreed. In the hushed lobby of his modest hotel, he offered her a drink in the private lounge upstairs. She accepted. The atmosphere was hushed, almost unreal. He spoke little. She spoke even less. But this silence was not empty. It was charged, of tension, of electricity, of a mystery still buried. When he asked her to stay, his voice wasn't flirtatious. It was almost pleading, like that of a man who, without knowing why, didn't want her to leave yet. "I won't cross any lines, Emily," he said softly, "not without your consent." She stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. And what was supposed to be a night of initiation, of surrender, became a night of revelation. There was no rush or brutality. He touched her with a tenderness he no longer suspected existed within him. But something bothered him. It wasn't the girl's innocence that surprised him. It was quiet strength with which she looked at him. The fact that she wasn't afraid. That she seemed no. When he tried to ask her a few questions about her life, she answered with vague but precise sentences. She knew things. Details. His middle name. The address of his parents' country house. His sister's name, Lena. His date of birth. He froze. "How do you know all this?" he asked, frowning. Emily looked at him calmly, naked under the sheets, her face bathed in the golden light of an antique lamp. She wasn't smiling. She wasn't trembling. Then she said slowly, without hatred, but without beating around the bush. "You don't remember me, do you? I'm the daughter of the one your father abandoned." Alexander felt dizzy. It was as if the ground beneath his feet opened silently, without warning, without sound. He stared at Emily, this young woman he had only just met, and suddenly, everything about her seemed different. Every gesture, every word exchanged since their meeting took on a new meaning. She wasn't there by chance. Maggie Carter, the name snapped into his mind like a long-repressed memory. He had heard it only a few times in his childhood, whispered behind closed doors, always in a murky, forbidden context. Maggie had been his father's mistress, Richard Reed, a formidable man in business, ruthless in private. When Maggie became pregnant, Richard, then at the height of his power, saw only a danger to his image. He had paid her to disappear. Emily, this young woman sitting in front of him, with such fine features, such a penetrating gaze, was the fruit of this betrayal. "I.L. Blummett. You are my sister?" But Emily slowly shook her head. No, not quite. A heavy silence followed, as dense as a storm about to break. Then she added, in a voice almost soft, but laden with a sharp truth. You're not my brother, Alexander. Your mother couldn't have children after you were born. My father isn't Richard Reed. But he tried to make me disappear when I was a baby. He wanted to buy silence, then fear. My mother fled. She protected me. And today, I've come to reveal the truth. She stopped, looking him straight in the eyes. But I didn't come for revenge. I came to free myself. Alexander felt something break inside him, a dam, an inner barrier he had built over the years. He stood up, paced nervously around the room, caught in a whirlwind of thoughts. He wanted to believe her, and he did, deep down, but it was too sudden, too deep, too painful. Emily opened her bag and took out Asmal's worn leather notebook, a precious relic. Inside, letters written in Maggie's handwriting, pieces of life scribbled between two silences, confessions addressed to a girl she had never wanted to burden with hatred. She kept everything. Copies of wire transfers, threatening letters, a torn photo of your father next to her, long before he disowned her. I didn't make this up, Alexander. I read all this when she fell ill, just before she died. That's when I decided to come find you. Alexander took the notebook, his hands shaking. He read a few lines. He recognized his father's handwriting, cold, calculated. But what troubled him most was Maggie's handwriting, full of love, full of contained pain. She never wanted revenge. She only wanted her daughter to live free, without shame. As he slowly closed the notebook, his eyes met Emily's. Are you mad at me? He murmurs. She shook her head. No, you're not him. I knew it the moment I saw you. You're marked by something. An old pain. A loss. He looked away. It wasn't just a memory, it was a gaping wound. His sister, Lena, died 15 years ago. Officially, a suicide. Unofficially, a cry that no one heard. He had been too young, too absent, perhaps too blind. He had never forgiven himself. And ever since, he lived surrounded by faceless women, meaningless contracts, a luxurious but empty life. Emily approached, and in a quiet, almost whispered voice, she said, I came to confront you, but I didn't expect to find you, as broken as I am. They spent the rest of the night talking. Without barriers, he told her about Lena, about the sleepless nights, about his father's anger, about his escape into business. She told him about his mother, about her silences, about her looks heavy with secrets. They talked about abandonment, about forgiveness, about what it really means to exist beyond an imposed past. A strange bond, indefinable, woven between them. Not love in the romantic sense. Not yet. But something inevitable in attraction, yes, but woven with compassion and recognition. An alchemy born from two solitudes that had recognized each other. And when Alexander tried, a few days later, to move away, believing he was doing the right thing, believing he was protecting her from a world that was too dark, Emily looked at him without wavering. You think you're running away to save me, but you've never been more alive than when you listened to me. It's not you I came looking for, Alexander. It's my own freedom. He stood there frozen, and for the first time in years, he was afraid of losing her. When the scandal broke, it was like a winter storm hitting without warning. The tabloids seized on the story with ferocious veracity. Richard Reed's mistress's hidden daughter confronts real estate empire heir. Secrets, betrayals, and forbidden passion. Emily Carter, an unknown who came to shake the skyscrapers. The rumors were rife. Some said Emily was manipulating Alexander. Others claimed she was an opportunist, seeking to extort money or blackmail the Reed family. Social media went wild. Leaked footage of Emily leaving Alexander's apartment made headlines. Blurred faces claimed to know her. The vultures were circling. In the corridors of Reed and Crown, panic was palpable. Investors withdrew one by one. Shares plummeted. Strategic partners demanded accountability, and Alexander's enemies, lurking in the shadows for years, smelled the scent of blood. Alexander found himself cornered. He was being urged to publicly disown Emily and restore the group's reputation. His lawyers were urging him to cut ties. His board was already talking about replacing him. So, one night, he asked Emily to leave. Not because he doubted her, but because he was afraid. Go, Emily. Go somewhere where we can't reach you. I'll handle this alone. She looked at him for a long time, without anger, without tears. Then she approached him, placed her hand on his cheek, and said simply, "Non." The next day, she spoke. In front of the cameras. Without notes. Without makeup. Without artifice. She told her story. Her mother. The letters. The leaks. The truth she had discovered. She didn't ask for revenge. She didn't ask for justice. She spoke about him. Alexander Reed isn't her father. He never put me down. He listened to me. He believed me. He saved me. He saw me as a person, not a problem. The audience was captivated. His sincerity shone through the screen. The lines began to move. Voices were raised in his favor. Public figures expressed their respect. And some investors quietly returned. But Alexander had changed. The scandal had acted as a salutary shock. He wanted no more of this world of pretense. He sold his shares in the most controversial branches of the Reed empire. He closed several dubious subsidiaries, restructured what he could, and created a foundation in memory of his sister, Lena, dedicated to the mental health of young women. Then he left business. During this time, Emily entered Columbia University with a scholarship that she refused to link to her name. She wanted to earn her place. Studying law was for her a way to transform one's pain into justice, to give meaning to this inherited fight. They lived together in a simple apartment in the Morningside Heights neighborhood. No luxury. No facade. They loved each other, but without rushing, they knew the fire still burned between them, sometimes even more intensely than at the beginning. But they were building something else. A relationship based on the slow repair, on free choice, on real listening. Sometimes, during the long winter nights, when New York fell silent under the snow and the streetlights cast shadows on the walls, Emily snuggled up to him. And in a breath, she murmured, "You thought I was an innocent virgin, but you were the one who needed saving." He didn't always respond, but he squeezed her fingers a little tighter. 3 years later, in a small clearing in the heart of the Vermont mountains, they exchanged their vows. No photographers, no celebrity guests, just a few loved ones, a few truths, and 2 healed souls. Emily wore a simple but radiant ivory gown, sewn by the same aunt with whom she had attended the Charleston Gala. Alexander, dressed in a light gray suit, had moist eyes. No flamboyant speeches. Just these words, whispered like a promise. "You made me believe that I could be a free man." And she, her eyes shining. "You reminded me that I was not born to be silent." The wind in the leaves was their music. Silence, their witness. And love, their rebirth.